Look, I didn't see this coming, but nobody had a better day on Tuesday than Boise State.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with this, the greatest and most chaotic sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers right now can get a big return on FanDuel. If you make a $5 bet and you get it right, you get $150 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ole Miss, are they bound to beat Florida? And how's the rest of the SEC shaping out? That will be discussed with Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss later. But let's begin with Boise State, who had a phenomenal day. A phenomenal day. Could it have been any better for Boise State? The Broncos, following their move up the rankings and the moving down of BYU after their loss to Kansas last week, Boise State doesn't just control their own destiny to get into the college football playoff. Boise State appears to control their own destiny to get a bye in the college football playoff. Did you hear what I just said? This is entirely realistic. So, Boise State's two remaining opponents are Wyoming this week, Oregon State next week. They are at Wyoming this week. They will win. They're hosting Oregon State next week. They will also win. And it'll come down to the Mountain West Championship game. They will either face Colorado State, who goes to Fresno State this week. Should be a really tough competitive game. Then they go to they host Utah State. And if they win both those games, it's Colorado State that can play spoiler for the Broncos in their playoff chase. And the G5 playoff hunt is something I've talked about pretty regularly here on the show because it's been heating up in the last couple of weeks. But it got even spicier with this Boise State revelation because the idea that a group of five team could have a bye in the college football playoff is patently absurd to me, but not to the people that are orchestrating the college football playoff here. That Boise State, who should absolutely be ranked, I am a proponent of the group of five having the ability to make the college football playoff. I am not against that. What I am against is the notion that the playoff committee just put forward, which is that the Broncos playing in the Mountain West, having the same record as BYU, deserve to be ranked ahead of them because their loss is better than BYU's win. So that's probably the argument the committee would use, right? Is, well, BYU lost to a 3-6 Kansas team. Okay, that's not a good loss. I'm not going to argue with that. Kansas is better than a 3-6 record indicates, but still, it's not a game that BYU should lose. They should absolutely be punished for that. And Boise State's loss, meanwhile, is a 3-point road loss to the number one team in the country. Okay, I'm not here to tell you that the loss isn't in favor of Boise State. Where is the win that matches a top 15 win over SMU, who wasn't ranked at the time, but we're watching SMU be the only undefeated team in the ACC and controlling their path to the college football playoff? Where is the win on Boise State's schedule? It was Washington State. Well, they just lost. They're not a top 25 team anymore. So that was the first takeaway I had. Secondarily, I understand that this is where the committee's head is at. Could Boise State get passed by a Big 12 champion? Yeah, it's possible. Remember, BYU goes to Arizona State this week. Arizona State is ranked number 21, which is way too low. Way too low. They go to number 16 Kansas State with the same record going into that game as the Wildcats. They thoroughly outplay them start to finish, and they are ranked 5 spots lower than Kansas State was the week prior. Riddle me that, Batman. I have no idea what the logic is there. I don't see it. I really don't. However, if Arizona State is unable to beat BYU this week, then guess what? BYU back in the driver's seat for the Big 12 Championship game. And if they were to face Colorado, who are going to be favored in each of their final 2 football games against Kansas and Oklahoma State, Kansas is much tougher between those two. If they face Colorado, who's ranked 16th in the college football playoffs latest rankings, then BYU could have that win launch them forward over Boise State. Unless just ponder this. Who came in at number 24 this week in the committee's rankings? Oh, look, it's UNLV. UNLV had Ricky White III, star wide receiver for the Rebels, on the show earlier this week. Go check out that interview if you haven't already. But UNLV being ranked is a big thing for Boise State. They should absolutely be rooting for them to beat San Jose State this week. That game is on a Friday. Don't miss it. Don't miss it, because the Broncos' lone opportunity to pick up a quality ranked win is in the Mountain West Championship game. Now, that opportunity might not be presented to them if either UNLV fails to win their final two games, which won't be easy, or if Colorado State does win their final two games. Because if that happens, it's the Rams that Boise State will face in the Mountain West Championship game and not UNLV. Then you could see the Big 12 champion, whether it's Colorado or Arizona State or BYU, go back ahead of the Broncos here. I think that's absolutely in play. But if they're able to get a rematch with a top 25 opponent in the conference title game, which is what the Broncos fans, they'd rather face Colorado State and get the revenge factor, it seems, but still. From a national standpoint, Boise State, UNLV is what everyone's rooting for. We'll just have to wait and see. But the Mountain West, this is an unquestioned benefit of the 12-team playoff, of which I've been a critic on many occasions, but we're not here to relitigate that. One of the things that is absolutely true is that for a group of 5 teams, you heard Ricky say it on yesterday's show, it's a huge part of adding interest and intrigue to that locker room. Would Boise State be pushing for a playoff spot anyway? Yeah, they'd be in the discussion, but would they be able to get there in the 4-team? No. But they're guaranteed to have access in the 12-team era. And so as a result, the Mountain West suddenly has the same level of playoff stakes in several of its games as SEC and Big 12 matchups this week, which is a crazy thing to say, but that's where we are. And so I was floored. I was completely shocked that BYU fell all the way behind the Broncos. Will they stay there? I don't know. Maybe the ranking committee is just doing this for fun. Maybe they're just looking at the current landscape and saying, you know what, we can rectify this. We can fix it later. We can put in the Big 12 champion ahead of Boise State, and the Group of 5 champion will not get a first-round bye without being undefeated. I get it. You lost on the road against top-ranked Oregon, but just remember what happens this week if Army's able to pull the upset. I don't think they will. Because I think Notre Dame is quietly playing some of the best football in all of college football right now. But if that were to happen, oh boy. Now we would have 3 teams going for 2 spots. You'd have the American champion, potentially, the Mountain West champion, the Big 12 champion. They can't all get in. The language is very clear. The 5 highest ranked conference champions get into the college football playoff. The assumption by myself and many others has been, well, to be the Power 4 champs. Well, how much do you think the committee respects Arizona State? They just gave Boise State more respect in these rankings than they did ASU. Let me know if you think that's going to just magically correct itself in a couple weeks' time. Perhaps a win against BYU will change their mind. Who they think so highly of, they dropped down behind Boise State and said, yeah, you guys have the same record, and yeah, the Broncos play in the Mountain West and BYU plays in the Big 12, but we're going to put the Broncos ahead of the Cougars anyway. I think it's absurd, but guess what? The people that are making these decisions clearly don't. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Let's bounce to the SEC. Where Ole Miss plays Florida this week. What is your upset alert meter, radar, sensor? How high is it wavering right now? How high should it be wavering? We're talking about that coming up next. First, let's talk about Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals or jump over lava or a lot of hoops to get there. But Mint Mobile makes it easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan. And it really is that simple. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. Remember when those went away for a little bit? Well, Mint Mobile said, no, that's not going to happen. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan, any one of them, and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Check them out. mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Well, the rankings made it very clear. Ole Miss has to win if they want to make the college football playoff. That's Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss, here to discuss. This is not a guaranteed win, Steven. Florida is a pretty darn good football team. Ole Miss is better. That's why they are favored. But on the road, I think this is one of the biggest games of the Lane Kiffin era.
Yeah, it's the biggest game in modern Ole Miss history because of what it means if you win it and everything going down the line. I think that Ole Miss is in good shape. Honestly, people that might remember this reminds me a lot of the way that Ole Miss finished the 2008 season. That was the year that at the end of the year, they just blew out LSU. They blew out Mississippi State, and then they blew out a number 3 ranked Texas Tech team in the Cotton Bowl. And that reminds me of this team. They kind of figured it out. They scuffled earlier in the season, and once it clicked in, it really clicked in. Now, Florida's a good team, but at the end of the day, DJ Lagway, if you're going to get him this year. He's gettable right now as a true freshman. DJ Lagway in 2026 is terrifying, but this year is the year to get him, and Ole Miss's offense has come along, and that defense is just nasty, stopping the run. I think this is a pretty good matchup for Ole Miss as a whole, but Florida is a good team and a lot better. The fan base of Florida, I hope you are enjoying this because you are not enjoying this young Florida team and their resurgence because you decided to do all of this crap in September and October to Billy Napier, and this is on you.
Well, okay, let me defend the Florida fans there. Let's not forget that Billy Napier had an entire offseason to get ready for 2024. It's his 3rd year in Gainesville, and Miami walked in there week 1 and kicked their rear ends out of the stadium like Magneto to Wolverine in X-Men Days of Future Past, and then Texas A&M waltzed in there and did the same thing 2 weeks later.
Yeah, those are pretty good teams. They're all ranked in the top 15.
They shouldn't have beaten them that badly, though.
But before this season, everybody thought that Florida was going to go 2-10 or 1-11. They looked at the schedule and they thought that Florida State members have actually drawn that future schedule up for this year. This was going to be a hard year. You had a young team with Billy Napier, and I just think that the young players that have been turning out for Florida and playing much better. I think Florida has only lost to top 15 teams at this point. That's the only teams that have beaten Florida this year. If you were to survive this, and they're going to end up in Birmingham or Memphis or one of those locations, but if you have a true freshman quarterback in DJ Lagway, a really good running back in Jaden Ball, and those guys, those bowl practices and all that matter, and Billy Napier getting there should be commended. It's not like he's gifted another year at Florida. He's actually, if he gets to 6 wins, which it looks like he's going to do, he has Florida State on the schedule.
Gosh, they're so bad.
Yeah, I think they should be commended.
I agree. I had them 5-7 before the year, and it looks like they're going to get to 6-6. And I thought 5-7 with that schedule was enough to save his job. 6-6 absolutely is. And Billy Napier's proven me wrong because I'm someone who said, wait a minute, it's not just that you lost in the first 3 weeks at home twice. It's that you got blown out. That's not good. But the progress and the buy-in in Gainesville is incredibly real throughout the course of this year. Beating LSU is not a small thing, and you know very well that Ole Miss is a capable football team, but Florida proved that they too can play with at least the top of tier 2 or bottom of tier 1 teams in the SEC. And yeah, they were more competitive than the score indicated against Georgia. They weren't competitive against Texas because they didn't have a quarterback there. I wonder how that game looks if DJ Lagway plays. I wonder how the Tennessee game looks if they don't have a quarterback injury there. Like, this is a Florida team that I think Ole Miss should be scared of. And I have said this many times on the show, Steven. I am not going to be switcheroo guy where if Ole Miss goes into Gainesville and wins by 20 points, I'm going to say, well, you were favored by 10. You should have got in there and win. Florida's not actually that good. Like, no, Florida's playing good football right now.
Florida play hard.
They're the best 5-5 team I have ever seen when they have Lagway in there, quarterback rolling along. But I think Ole Miss can lose this game if they play the way they did against Kentucky.
Yes, but I do not think they're going to play the way they did against Kentucky. The switch has kind of been flipped, it seems like, to the Ole Miss team. Now, it's possible. Like I said, the only way that Kentucky or that Florida can win this game is if Ole Miss plays down to the level to where they can get them. If Ole Miss plays its best, Florida doesn't have a chance to win the game. The offense and the defense, they're just too good. Florida's a little bit too young. But if Ole Miss turns the ball over, if Ole Miss has some silly drive saving penalties like they did against Kentucky. If they go for it on fourth down in the swamp in minus territory and do not make it to where Florida has a nice short field for a touchdown against that defense, you could have a lot of trouble. Florida is talented enough to beat you. They had like 15 players, I think, preseason that were Senior Bowl watch list level players. This is a talented football team. They're a young quarterback. They have a young running back, some young skillful players, but this is a decent football team. But at the end of the day, I think the spread is about right.
Yeah, it's Florida minus 10.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. They're America's
Plus
number one
10.5.
sportsbook. I'm just saying they're America's number one sportsbook for people who might not have known. But I think for Ole Miss in this spot, when I think about how they played it the first half of the year, very similar to Florida. I think they're playing much better in the second half. How good does that win against South Carolina look right about now?
Oh, yeah,
South Carolina, who has played their way deservedly into the top 25, that was this close to beating LSU. You know how close South Carolina is to being a college football playoff contender right now? They are this close.
A push on a quarterback away from being the college football playoff.
But Lenore Sellers is clearly the guy.
Oh yeah,
I think he's clearly the guy. But you can make the case that a blown call by the officials is the difference between South Carolina being where they're at and South Carolina being in the mix to be the 7th, potentially 10-2 SEC team at the end of the year. Talked about that on yesterday's rankings reaction show with Brian Smith of Locked On Seminoles and our Locked On Recruiting Insider here at the network. Like, I mean, it's just bonkers. It is bonkers how close South Carolina is. That's a darn good football team. But so when I look at Ole Miss and Florida, like, yes, it can be a competitive game, but I've also seen Ole Miss in the second half of the season, Steven, play really well on both sides of the ball. I look at the Arkansas game, and I don't poo-poo that either, because I think Arkansas, they're not great, but they're solid. And for Ole Miss to go in there and drop a 60-piece, yeah, I think the offense is gelling a lot more throughout the second half of the year than it did in the first.
I think it's bad. I think Florida, if I'm not mistaken, they're kind of young on the back end of the defense, and that's problematic playing against Jackson Dart and this Ole Miss passing attack. There's a good chance that Trey Harris is going to be back in this football game, which means that Ole Miss is going to bring back the number one wide receiver in all of college football. And the running backs, interesting. I think that Ole Miss needs to run the ball just enough to be a threat running the ball. If Ole Miss can do that, they're going to put up 30, 35 points in this game. And then the question becomes, can Florida score 30 to 35 points? And I think they're going to score. I think they're going to make plays. I think Billy Napier, whenever he's rolling, he can be a good schemer with what he's doing. It does a lot of motions and things like that. But in this game, I don't know if anybody can score 30 points on Ole Miss's defense. So if Ole Miss can score over 30 against Florida, they have a good chance to win the game. That's the reason I think Florida wants this game to be a rock fight.
By the way, for those listening or watching out there, I heard Steven declare Trey Harris is the best wide receiver in college football. I'm not going to comment. I just want you to know that I heard it, and I don't feel like debating it right now because there are bigger things to discuss. He's up there. He's up there. I'm just gonna.
He's number one in receiving right now and hadn't played in
I'm just gonna leave it there. We're just gonna leave that discussion be. We're not touching that. That is, what's something you don't want to touch? Hot lava, hot coals. That's a pan in the oven. Okay, don't touch without an oven mitt. I don't have my oven mitts on me, so we're not gonna do that right now. Here's what we are gonna do. We're gonna pick every game in the SEC, including this one in Gainesville, and all the other games, but I refuse on principle to pick the SEC cupcake games. So we'll overlook those because you're going to as well, and you should. They won't be close. I don't think UTEP's pushing Tennessee, but does Florida upset Ole Miss? And much more coming up next. Are you missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? Well, guess what? Skylight Frames has got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. And it's easy to use. The setup takes less than 60 seconds, so you don't have to be a tech wizard. I'm certainly not. But guess what? Skylight Framed is making it easy, and they've got seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email, no account or subscription required. You hate giving your email places and accounts that you don't really want to sign up for? Yeah, they're not about that over at Skylight Frames. Add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. Go check out Skylight Frames today. Then, once you're done with that, by the way, This episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. Yeah, 150. 150. It can be as simple as Tennessee to beat UTEP this week. That's easy. Tennessee's going to beat UTEP. They're favored by 41.5. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And of course, they have college football as well, so check them out at FanDuel.com. You'll get 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Can Florida really get it done? Can Texas struggle with Kentucky just like Ole Miss did? And so much more in the SEC, except for the bye games that everybody essentially has here. Let's start Ole Miss and Florida, make our predictions here, Steven. I'm going Ole Miss to win the football game. I think it's a cover. Numbers 10.5 according to our friends at FanDuel. I don't think it's a huge cover. I think it's like a 14, 15-ish or so. So give me Ole Miss 31, Florida 17.
I kind of like that score. I was thinking like 28-10. Honestly, the same score of the Georgia game. I think that is the type thing that can happen. It will be important for Ole Miss to front run in this game. Ole Miss needs to jump on Florida, because if you let DJ Lagway and that team get hope and the swamp get riled up, you could have a little bit of trouble. So Ole Miss does need to front run, but I think the Rebels get it done.
Georgia has UMass. Tennessee has UTEP. South Carolina has Wofford. Arkansas has Louisiana Tech. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? I don't know. Let's talk about Texas, Kentucky instead, because Texas is suddenly starting to take strays from the college football internet sphere. And those strays come in the form of, they haven't beaten anyone good. They're not, I don't even know if they're really good. Like, I don't know. Oklahoma's not a great team. They beat them 34-3. What did you want them to do? Arkansas is a solid team. They're not great. But does every team play its best football every single week? Is it easy suddenly to go into Fayetteville and win? Why don't you ask Tennessee how easy it is to go in Fayetteville and win a football game? And I thought Texas was going to win. It was certainly closer than some would have expected, but I didn't think they'd cover 12.5. They didn't. So they're coming back home against Kentucky. They have to avoid the look-ahead factor here, Steven. That old little peek ahead where you go, oh, Texas A&M's coming this week. Like, wait, that's Kentucky right there. Go back to that fateful day, some would say, where Kentucky knocked off Ole Miss. How do the Wildcats replicate that formula in Austin?
What they did against Ole Miss, and like I said, this was before Ole Miss kind of figured things out offensively. They just frustrated the Rebels and just let the Rebels self-destruct on themselves. That was Kentucky's whole game plan. It was to let Ole Miss do it. And there was a couple of fumbles in the red zone and things like that. It was just a bad day for Ole Miss. I do not think that Kentucky can replicate that against Texas. I do not think that something like that can happen, because Texas, I don't think, is at a point where with Quinn Ewers and that they will self-destruct like that. It might be a low-scoring game. It might look similarly to the Arkansas game, but Texas is going to win this game.
Yeah, favored by at 20.5.
I don't know if they cover. I don't know if I would say they'd cover.
Yeah, there's the one side of me, Steven, that says, look, Texas is a much better team on paper. Of course they are. Of course they should be able to win this game really, really big. But on the other hand, Quinn Ewers goes up and down. Kentucky can play some nasty defense. They can hang with Georgia every single year, it seems. They pulled the upset of Ole Miss. Do they have it again here? But Texas is at home, and I don't want to look back and feel like, I put my score prediction on Kentucky doing good things. I'd rather not. I'll go Texas 31-6 over Kentucky. I think that Texas defense is good. I think that Kentucky offense is decidedly not.
I think the score will be 24-14-ish in this game, and that is because that Texas is going to be looking at A&M the same way that Texas A&M is not looking over Auburn right now.
Alabama goes to Oklahoma. Not a good first year for the Sooners in the SEC. Rude introduction to Southeastern Conference football, and who could have foreseen that was going to be the case? But certainly not the host of this particular show. But Texas having a lot of success, Oklahoma less so. I don't know whether this is a more dangerous game for Alabama than Auburn next week, because Auburn's at home. This is on the road, But Oklahoma, rough watch. Like to me, Oklahoma can be a really rough watch offensively, but they are coming back to Norman. Maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
Alabama is looking pretty good in the second half of the season. This isn't the same team that lost to Vanderbilt. This isn't the same team that lost to Tennessee right now. They're kind of clicking pretty good. Oklahoma kind of just wants this season over. I think the quit factor is going to happen. This is senior night in Norman, Oklahoma. That'll probably
they're also off a bye. Consider
they're
that.
off a bye. I want to see if Oklahoma scores in the first half. If they have a game to where they're leading at halftime, similar to what they did in Oxford, Mississippi, maybe the crowd gets behind and it gets going. I don't have a lot of hope for the Oklahoma Sooners, though.
I don't either. FanDuel's got Alabama favored by 13.5. I don't know. At home off a bye, last home game, that's a lot. That's a lot of points for that. Yeah, and Alabama's had their ups and downs. I think I agree with you, though, that they found something against LSU. I think LSU is a much better team than Oklahoma. So if you give me that same sort of performance, sure, I'll go Bama with a slight cover. Not a major cover. This could be uncomfortable for a quarter, but I think by the third quarter of this football game, Kalen DeBoer has his football team figuring it out. 31-13 Alabama.
I was thinking 27-10.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Like the at-home off a bye has got to mean something. And if it doesn't, Oklahoma, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself what in the world you're doing in the conference here. Texas A&M and
real quick, Oklahoma is going to beat LSU the next week.
Whoa! Oh, Steven coming in hot. Absolutely scorching hot. I'm here for it. I don't know if I agree with it, but I'm here for it. Speaking of LSU, who do they play this week that has the exact same record? Vanderbilt. It's just,
and I think Vanderbilt's winning too. And they're wearing those awful gold uniforms that they put out. Matt Moscano of Locked On LSU tweeted about them. They're going to be wearing special uniforms. It is all there for LSU to just have a horrible last two games to where everything goes against Brian Kelly. Seriously.
Yeah, it has not gone as planned for one of the highest paid coaches in all of college football. But look, LSU at home, they're only favored by 7.5 against Vanderbilt. Like if Vanderbilt wins this game, they will lock up finishing higher in the standings than LSU. That is a crazy statement. That's where we are in college football circa 2024. I think LSU is ticked off because their season's maybe they come out flat because season's over. What are we playing for? To play in the ReliaQuest Bowl or something like maybe
they wish for the ReliaQuest Bowl. They're looking at Music City or Texas right now.
Yeah, Steven is not at all scarred by what happened in Baton Rouge many weeks ago. No, not even
on the last play. Oh.
Yeah, 2 4th downs in that drive, or Ole Miss would have no pressure against Florida, really. Ole Miss would be a one-loss team. Ole Miss would be ranked in the top 7 at the very least in the college football playoff rankings, but that's not where we are. So I will take LSU to win. I'm also going to take LSU to cover. I think they find something here at home and are trying. I think Brian Kelly's trying to remind the fans, hey, I can still do some good things here, and getting to 8 wins feels a lot better than sitting at 6 for the rest of the year when you were 6-2 at one point, 6-2, 6-3, and so I'll take Vanderbilt to lose. Unfortunately, not something I'm fond of doing, but LSU to win, LSU to cover 28-17.
I'm gonna say Vanderbilt 21, LSU 17.
Oh man, the vengeance is so very real. How about Texas A&M going to Auburn this week? All eyes, just like the Longhorns, and perhaps even more so, Steven, because they're on the road, Texas A&M got to avoid the look-ahead factor. They cannot get caught thinking about Texas and what a big showdown it could be. That showdown will have no implications for them and will just be a spoiler for Texas, which still means something, if they do not win this game at Auburn this week. And boy, I kind of get the sense that Vegas knows something that we don't. Texas A&M minus 2.5. I refuse to pick Auburn. I mean, they're just an absolute unbridled mess. They had their SEC late season cupcake last week. I'm taking Texas A&M to win the game. I don't think there are a lot of points in this one, though. 23-16.
Well, 96% of the money on this game is on Texas A&M. and they're not moving the line. They did the same thing last week for Kansas and BYU. They did not move it with BYU favored by 2.5 points. The week before, they did the same thing with Ole Miss and Georgia. Georgia was favored by 2.5 points. The same thing. Vegas knows something in this situation. Give me the Auburn Tigers all day long. All right, like 24-14.
Okay, I can't bet against Vegas. I've tried that too many times this year. It has bitten me in the rear end quite often. So I'm flipping. I'm flipping here just because of Vegas. Just because they refuse to do that. I'll take Auburn in a tight one, 21-20. A
big win for the Tennessee Vols, because if Texas A&M handles business against Texas in Kyle Field, all of a sudden Texas is going to fall below Tennessee in the pecking order.
They'd have to.
And Tennessee would be comfortably into the college football playoff. There's your path, Tennessee fans.
Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss. Steven, appreciate it as always.
No problem, buddy.
Appreciate it for listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.